Nancy is Texas Chainsaw's newest family member, and today we're going to be bringing you a complete guide on how to play Nancy. We'll be covering everything there is to know and how you can most effectively use this family member in your own matches. If you enjoy this guide here today, make sure to drop a like or subscribe, as it helps me to continue making content here on YouTube. This video has been divided into timestamps in order to help you find any specifics you may be looking for. Lastly, I live stream Texas Chainsaw over on Twitch regularly, so stop on in and say hello, link in the description. But let's get rolling. So kicking things off, I briefly wanted to share each of Nancy's abilities with you, and then dive deeper into both of them. Nancy's main ability is called Spy. This allows her to see through the eyes of one of the victims, revealing an approximate location. You'll have a limited time window in which you can see a victim, and your vision will be pretty blurry. The second ability Nancy has in her kit is Barbed Wire. With this barbed wire, you can trap gaps in order to snare victims. With that quick overview, let's take a closer look on how Nancy's barbed wire functions. When Nancy spawns into a match, you'll notice that she has access to 3 sets of barbed wire. There's no way to obtain more barbed wire within the match, so make sure that you're placing them resourcefully. If you ever see more than 3 sets of barbed wire in a game, then the Nancy on your team probably has the pins and needles perk equipped. Nancy is able to place her barbed wire on most small or medium-sized gaps you can find in your matches. Nancy can place her barbed wire on open crawl spaces or any of the gaps that victims can slip through. As you play Nancy, you'll get more familiar with locations you can and can't place barbed wire, as there are some differences between maps and spaces. Most commonly, you'll see Nancy players setting their barbed wire on small gaps that victims commonly slip through or in hallways. But it's also worth noting that they can be placed on doorways once the door has been removed or barged through. If you aren't happy with where you've placed a trap during a given match, don't worry, you can always pick it up and place it somewhere new. Nancy is unable to place her traps on things such as sliding metal doors, ladders, bone barricades, and larger spaces. It's smart to put these traps in high traffic areas, as you'll be more likely to snare a victim, but be aware if a fellow family member runs through your barbed wire, it will be taken down. This means that you'll have to go and reset it yourself once again. Once you've got your barbed wire placed and your victim has been snared, you'll receive a notification on the right side of your screen letting you know that you've caught a victim in your trap. Unlike hitchhiker traps, victims will be able to continue moving with the barbed wire attached to them, but there will be an initial stagger before they can start moving. The barbed wire will inflict some initial damage onto the victim, and as they move around with the barbed wire on, it will ring out, letting nearby family members know exactly where the victim is located. Victims can remove the barbed wire themselves or with the help of another teammate, but this does take just a short little bit of time. If you've ever been in a situation where you aren't able to take the barbed wire off by yourself immediately as a victim, that probably means Nancy has brought along the perk, wait a second. If a victim has tripped your barbed wire, it will not be consumed, but you will have to reset the trap once more, or you can collect it and add it back to your inventory. Overall, Nancy's barbed wire is pretty nasty, and it's definitely something victims will want to avoid getting caught in, if possible. It serves as a really effective tool to help the family quickly locate and execute a victim, and it makes it a lot harder for victims to recover and slip away from a situation. Like I mentioned before, I find that placing traps in high traffic areas is really good as long as the family members on your team are aware of where your wire is located. It's worth noting that you can see where your barbed wire is located by using the Family R Reading ability. Make sure when placing your barbed wire, you don't put it in a spot that might make it difficult for fellow family members to traverse the map if they don't want to break it down. Additionally, I found that Nancy's wire can be a really great tool to defend things such as the fuse box or key items located around the map. But with Nancy's barbed wire out of the way, let's jump into her Spy ability. As mentioned before, Nancy's Spy ability allows her to briefly see through the eyes of a victim, giving you a possible pinpoint location on the victim's whereabouts. The vision is pretty blurry, and it can be difficult to make out where a victim is located. Veteran TCM players will have a much easier time using this ability, as it'll be much more straightforward to spot landmarks or familiar areas in order to figure out where a victim is hanging out. To use the ability, simply press the ability button, and you'll be brought into a victim's vision. Be aware that after spotting a victim with your Spy ability, Nancy will endure a brief stun. The victim will also receive a notification letting them know that you've seen their current location. This ability can really come in handy when it comes to slowing victims down, as you can gather lots of information on where they may be traveling to or what kind of escape they may be attempting. It can also be great information if victims are taking things slow and if the rest of the family just can't seem to find anyone. Now, you also may have noticed that Nancy can interact with those powder tables found around the map. Consuming powder at a table will simply reduce the cooldown of your spy ability, or in other words, your spy ability will come back online faster after consuming powder. Nancy is unable to consume powder if her spy ability is fully charged, and she can only consume one powder from each table while her ability is on cooldown. Nancy can revisit tables later to gather more powder if they are not empty. I've noticed that Nancy's spy ability can be incredibly useful when the family is left scratching their heads on victim whereabouts. It can be really handy to pass information along to your teammates during lulls in the match, and Nancy works incredibly well on players with tons of map knowledge. Sometimes it can even be nice to use her spy ability during a grandpa howl, as you put an insane amount of pressure onto the victim, and it puts them in a really tough spot. Anyways, now that we've got a good understanding on how to play Nancy, let's jump over into some of her perks so that we can beef up those abilities. Nancy has access to 11 unique perks in total, and they can have some pretty major effects on how her powers function. I really like how these unique perks can change the way you play her, or change which of her abilities you want to lean into more. The first perk we have on the list today is Ding Dong. The bell attached to these strands of barbed wire will ring 100% louder, and its highlight range will be increased by 50%. After that, we've got Hurt 'em. Barbed wire traps do 50% more damage. Up next is All Kill Them All. After using her ability, Nancy's damage is increased by 15% for 30 seconds. After that, we've got the perk Pins and Needles. Placing a strand of barbed wire has a 25% chance to not consume an inventory item. Up next is Poisoned Claws. Attacks have a slight poison effect for 15 seconds. Next up is Strong Minded. After using her ability, Nancy's stamina depletion is reduced by 30% for 30 seconds. Next on the list is Wait a Second. Victims who mistakenly get tangled in barbed wire must wait 20 seconds before removing it. However, fellow victims can help remove it right away. After that is Give Me More. Nancy's ability regeneration rate is increased by 15%, but stamina regeneration is reduced by 15%. Up next is Hey Sissy. Ingesting Sissy's powder reduces the ability cooldown rate by 15%, but adversely causes 7 seconds of blurry vision the next time your ability is used. After that, we've got Not That Easy. Barbed wire will now be 60% more difficult for victims to remove. The last perk on our list for today is Sip Sip Sip. Melee attacks give 30% more blood in your vial, but attack damage is reduced by 20%. Now that we've got Nancy's perks done, let's jump into some attributes. When looking at her strongest attributes, Nancy excels in the blood harvesting category, only being beaten out by Sissy with her base stats. Her savagery is just middle of the road when compared against the rest of the family, making her decent for some damage output, but certainly not the best. Nancy has the second worst endurance in the game, and this is largely due to her tracking capabilities. Overall, she has some pretty decent attributes for what her kit has to offer. To polish things off for today, let's take a quick look at Nancy's skill tree and ability skill tree. When looking at her skill tree, you'll notice that it isn't too terribly complicated. Down the left side, you'll find a lot of Nancy's unique perks, so this is a great choice if you really enjoy using her kit rather than traditional perks. Some of the middle routes offer a mix of strong traditional perks, such as Scout, with some unique ones, such as All Kill Them All. Lastly, down the right side, you'll still have access to a lot of her unique perks, but a bit less so than some of the left side routes. Anyways, I just wanted to give you all a quick look at this. Let's jump over to her ability skill tree. In Nancy's ability skill tree, you'll find a variety of upgrades to her power that you can obtain when leveling her up. We'll just be covering the level 2 and 3 perks, as the level 2 perks are just upgraded versions of our level 1 perks. On the left side, starting at level 2, we'll get an increased active time with our spy ability by 55%. Down the middle, we'll get an increased recharge to our ability bar by 40%. And down the right, we'll be reducing the recharge time between ability uses by 67 seconds. Starting on the left at level 3, you'll always spy on the victim closest to you. Down the middle, you'll always spy on the victim furthest from you, and down the right, you'll have much clearer vision when spying on victims. I like how there's some variety in how you can utilize Nancy's spy ability within the tree, and there's some really fun options to pick from. Anyways, that's all we have for today's video, and I truly hope you enjoyed this guide on how to play Nancy. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to drop a like or subscribe, and comment down below your thoughts on TCM's newest family member. Thank you all so much. We'll see you in the next one.